All right, hello, and we are live after a couple of technical difficulties, and we are really excited for episode 11, which is called Making Waves, Building Connections on Boston's Waterfront. And we're very excited to invite Sean Hagan of Long Hagan Huff-Harris to the show. He's going to tell us what the Making Waves things and the Boston Waterfront is all about. But Sean is the partner at a family business and estate law firm in the Boston area. And Sean, before we dive into the Making Waves and the Waterfront and all that kind of stuff, we'd love to hear from you. What's a great and interesting networking event that you've been part of recently?
Sure. So we've been operating in Boston for about 10 years and, fewer years in Duxbury, about 4 years in Duxbury. And this year we decided to participate in a networking event that I'd never attended. So we decided to host a sort of hot chocolate stand at this event that I hadn't attended. So I had a lot of MacGyvering going on to make it all come together. And we didn't really know what to expect. And this was this past weekend on Sunday. And we ended up having over 200, I think, if we count it all up, people come through to get hot chocolate. That's awesome. Thankfully, we bought enough, but it was a really good networking event because we got to see current clients that came up to the table and said, hey, good to see you, all that. Thanks for helping us out. And then also some prospective clients that were interested in what we were offering. So the one downside to it, at a networking event, we like to see other businesses too. They were participating, but we didn't have a lot of interaction because we were just so slammed with our own offering of the hot chocolate that we didn't get to interact with the other businesses. But very good networking event, kind of an unexpected fun thing that we put together sort of last minute because we weren't planning on doing it, and then like, we should do this thing, and I'm glad we did.
Sounds awesome. Can you tell us, before we dive into the networking thing, can you tell us a little bit about the law firm?
Sure. So we've been in business about 10 years. We really focus on the three areas I already mentioned, right? So small business work, trust and estates, and family law. I think it's really important to keep within a lane when you're offering services so you can really excel at it. And we're typically anywhere between 12 to 13 lawyers, usually under 30 staff total. So it's a small firm feel, but we have a little bit built in as far as redundancy. If someone's out of the office on vacation, like, they can actually take a vacation. Like, each person's critical, but not so critical that we have service suffer. So I think it's a great size to not only work at, but really provide high quality service too in these areas.
Awesome. You guys have been around for how long now?
So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary, this year. So we have a holiday party planned. We're going to do a little corny slideshow like through the years, and looking back at some photos, you wouldn't think that lawyering would age you so much in 10 years, but my God, I was just like, oh man. So it's a good reflection point for us this year to look back and then also look to the future. So it's 10 years in.
I feel like everything ages you. It doesn't matter. You can't win. Well, so I have to tell you, Sean, I have been talking about the sailing trip I went on with your firm over the summer since we started. So we're in episode 11. I think I probably mentioned it in every episode. And so I loved it, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that got started and how it works. And
Sure. Yeah, because we're a small firm, right? So like, it's a little bit of an odd thing. I think Compass Real Estate has a boat out there. A few other businesses have boats, but for us, it was born out of how terrible I am at golf. So
I appreciate that.
And our budget. You hear about a sailboat on the harbor, you think, oh, it must be big bucks. It's actually way less expensive to run an event like that for the weeks that we do it, as opposed to going to a sports game, taking people out to dinner, all of that, and really lets us have a unique experience. So we kind of stumbled into it because we were really interested in this, right? Big part of what we're trying to do when we do marketing is to be really genuine. And I knew that if I learned to play golf just to get out and network, I feel like I'd be playing catch up, you know what I mean? And I really wouldn't have it be genuine to us. So this is a unique opportunity. We had a client who was selling a boat. I had grown up doing this stuff, but never with a boat this size. And we knew that we wanted to do it in Boston. So we found a nice home at Charlestown Marina, and it just has worked out great. We're in our 7th year doing it. And it allows us to talk about getting people on board, even when we're not doing the current sailing.
Yeah.
So we tend to do Memorial Day to Labor Day as a period of time, and that gives us about 12 to 15 trips.
Yep.
And over the course of the year, we actually build out who would be good guests, leaving some room for other people. And the whole concept was to create a mini networking event each time we went out, and to put a lot of effort into trying to pair people that would do business with each other. So very much a focus on giving value by creating a mini networking opportunity, and really like hopefully people remember who introduced them, sort of thing, and not looking for value right away, which I think is a real key to organic networking. So create an environment where it's valuable to the people coming, and then of course they're going to want to benefit you, right? Apparently work with Jeff, since he's been talking about it since. So as an example, but really that was the idea, is like, how do we get people that might never have met before together in a concentrated space and give them a really cool experience. So just to let everyone know what we do, we usually leave around 5 o'clock. We end up providing food from local companies. Brewer's Fork in Charlestown was a favorite this past year. And we do have drinks on board, and all different types of things like that. And just take people out for a networking sail, show them the harbor. Usually there's enough wind to get some sailing in. We can always motor if we need to. Weather dependent, sort of. It does have a cabin, so we've been out in some not so great weather. People have had a good time. This past summer in the beginning, we got drenched and everyone had a great time. I actually, they kicked people out at the end of the night. It was like 11:30. Like, all right, guys, it's time to go. So we really have had success with it, despite challenges you might anticipate, like weather, cost, the production element of it. Takes a lot though. We have our list of things that we need, inventory of stuff on board. We had talked about maybe having like a official deckhand help one year, and then COVID hit, so we were going out less. So we're still a work in progress, just like any marketing initiative, but it has provided a lot of cool memories, and a lot of people's LinkedIn and Facebook profiles, the pictures are the boat. So it sort of has this residual value beyond that. And then of course, those that we get to invite, if they can't make it, there's still a degree of credit sort of for the invite, and so it's another way to show people that we care about them. They're in our network and we're connected.
How many people actually fit in the boat?
So our max is 15 at one time. It's not something I would recommend. It's, I would say like 6 to 8 is a comfortable. We tend to have to invite around 9 or so, because last minute things pop up. Getting to Charlestown at 5 o'clock, depending where you're coming from, could be challenging. So sometimes people just say, look, it's going to be an hour and a half. I didn't anticipate this, can't make it. Or, something comes up with work, they have to stay. But for the most part, people are pretty excited to attend. And we usually get anywhere from like 8 to 9 people, 6 to 9 people, something like that each time we go out.
Very cool.
So Sean, do you have any great like sailboat wins, like where you've either gotten, major business through that, or created major business for other people that you're able to share?
Yeah, there's a couple examples I would point to. So we get a lot of business from financial advisors, and some are very close to us, and we say thank you for business, come out on the boat, and others I'll just say are sort of potential people we want to get to know. And so we've had a couple come on that I know I would not have had the opportunity to meet otherwise. And it's been great because they were into sailing. I sort of knew this, did the invite a little bit cold. They came out, and then it's produced this long-term lasting business relationship. And, comments like so-and-so never attends these events or never stays the whole time. So it had to be appealing to the person, right? In contrast, you might invite someone that has no interest in getting on a boat. They get seasick, they're not interested in being trapped for that amount of time, from their view. So really, you have to pick the right opportunities. But I would say probably 2 or 3 people I never would have gotten to meet, but for this. And then there's a million other small stories. So those are sort of major people that have been really a part of the firm for a while as far as business goes. But I can't tell you how many small little wins, we'll call it, have come out of the boat. This included just being able to be invited on this podcast, right, Jeff? Because we didn't know each other before, and we got to do this. And so there's just these little things that end up yielding value. And that's our philosophy with networking. It's sort of always do the value add thing, and it will come back without any sort of assessment of like, is it worth it or not? You got to try different things. If things are clearly not working with a marketing initiative or networking thing, you got to move on, right? But in general, take that shot, take that chance is our mantra around here.
No, very cool. Yeah, I was just going to say, I was just going to tie that into Taylor, because I know Taylor, of course, at Layton, there's a Layton sailing team. And I was invited to an event there, and there are definitely lasting networking things that have come out of that, including to this very day. Not only solidifying my relationship with Layton, right, but on top of that, really, there were quite a few of the other connections that were made a little bit unexpectedly, too, just based on one of my new roles that I just took on. So it's pretty fascinating. Taylor, I think that
Yeah.
That's really good for you.
I was going to say too, Sean, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, but there's so many very similar types of networking events, right? It could be after work, maybe there's cocktails or it's a day panel. So I think being able to be creative and obviously too, like tying into a passion of yours, I think anything in life, especially when it comes to professionally, if you can tie in a piece of yourself that helps so much with relationship building and trust and getting to know someone. And I appreciate too, maybe, it's obviously due to the boat itself and not by choice, but a 6 to 9 person, trip is great. Like I'm a big proponent of smaller is sometimes so much better because you can really get to know someone, really build those relationships. It sounds like people don't want to leave around 11:30 anyway. So you're
That's
getting
not
at
every
least
night. It was just the night it rained the most, the night you expect everyone to leave early. We usually wrap around like 9 or so, 9:30.
Yeah. But that's really nice time that you can't, get back and you can't, or not always get from someone, I should say. Right. Because life's busy. People have families, people have work. And so you might not see someone, every month, but having that is a great way to get to know someone.
Yeah, totally focus on sort of more meaningful events that are entertaining, different, and they can participate in a little bit. I think that's the key thing too, that we get them behind the wheel. I used to teach sailing, coach it. So like we get people involved if they want to. And it creates a unique experience. Contrast that with attending like a really well-attended, lots of people networking event. I view those events as more mining the next opportunity to have a closer relationship, either with a one-to-one or a smaller group or a mastermind or something like that. So the big events where there's a ton of people are good for a different purpose. But this is a curated list of people we think, will get along and get value from one another.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like you said, I mean, I have not forgotten. Man, I mean, it was, and I remember actually, think you and I had this conversation while we're still on the boat. This idea of, I firmly believe that marketing and sales all boil down to trust, right? And there's something about spending 4 hours with somebody, on a boat, out on the harbor, whatever, where you've built a connection. And there was no, I mean, there was no selling, whatever. But if somebody was like, I need an estate planning lawyer, I would be like, I know exactly who to send them to, because I can't, I won't forget it. And I trust you guys because, you kept me alive on a boat for,
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. There's hopefully an assumed professional competency there, right? And then if you like and trust the person on top of that, that's the stuff that you don't always get from these other networking events. It's hard to assess that. Hard to assess from the consumer standpoint too, for the services, right? It's the assumption should be excellent quality of service, but when you get to know people a little bit, you probably understand how they handle things, and I think that probably builds confidence as well, and how they treat others just in that environment usually extends to how they treat customers, right? So I think that there's some subtle cues for how we would do things professionally without having to do like the hard sell or boast it. But again, the whole point of that is really to bring people together and add value. And we have the residual value being the hosts, but it's not as much about direct sales, like you said. So
right.
We talk about on the podcast a lot about being like a linchpin in a networking group. And because if you can establish yourself as a linchpin of, hey, I brought these 6 to 8 individuals together, they had a fantastic time. And now every time they think of one of the other 8 people, they're also thinking of me.
Right.
That brings so much more value to every relationship as well.
So one thing, Sean, that we like to ask is, I'm guessing, I don't know, was it sort of like as you were in law school or whatever, you're like, oh, I'm going to end up doing a lot of networking? Was that like on your bingo card, or was that?
Not really. No. Law school, I'll give. So I went to Suffolk for law school and then BU for the LLM tax degree, right? So I had these 2 different law schools, perspectives on it. I'll say Suffolk does a better job than most with preparing you for real lawyering. They do have something called the Accelerator to Practice program, where students can enter law school now. I don't think it was available when I was there, where they intend to create their own business after or work in a small firm setting. And then the school pairs them with different firms to host them for different experiences. And we've hosted a bunch, maybe like 6 or so of these students. So I think the academy, if you will, I'm sure other schools are doing this too, they're getting better about that, about preparing people. And they did have a bunch of things where they called it networking, but it was mostly with alums. And it was kind of like the classic pastor d'oeuvres in the hallway or in the atrium at the school. And it was, you didn't really have a concept of it. But as far as like business development networking, I had no clue and had to learn very quickly. I'll credit the Charles River Chamber with doing a great job early on. Some groups over there used to be the Newton Eden Chamber. So just you meet the right people and you learn how it's done, sort of.
Yeah.
And then other networking groups like BNI, sort of foundational skills, like those sort of things. And I know that it's a polarizing group, BNI, but at least it does provide some training wheels for this sort of stuff. So the school didn't do a ton, but I'd say more than most. And I suspect it's gotten a lot better since.
Do you find that when new lawyers come into the firm, you have to kind of train them to kind of
absolutely.
network?
Absolutely, you do. We try and have our associates participate in a networking group with a seat. It doesn't have to be a BNI.
Yeah.
We also have experimented. One of our employees is dedicated 60% of her time. She's an associate attorney, is business development. And so this was me looking around and saying, why do all these other industries have these sales folks? Like, we don't have someone like that. I don't want it to be only sales, whoever's doing this job. And, that's been going really well. She's been licensed for a little bit. Her name's Jen. She's awesome. I think you may have met her that night. So she's on her way. And this could be a new model for us. We think it's the future because honestly, there's certain skills involved in networking and sales and communicating the brand and communicating what you can do. And sometimes the sort of technical lawyers that are really good lawyers, that doesn't always translate into communication in a sales capacity. So we've been experimenting with that. I don't know other firms that have done it. I suspect maybe they have. I'm not really sure. That's the other thing. I'm always looking to meet other law firm owners to see what they're doing, right? But everyone's really busy and it's hard to get together. So a lot of our decisions related to marketing, networking, branding have been sort of independent, trying to educate ourselves through available books, online podcasts, everything, all that sort of other content.
Yep.
So not a part of the normal training for lawyers, for sure.
So at what point in your career did you realize that networking was something that you were going to have to get out there and do? And
I'll answer that for myself. It was a little bit different because the firm was very, young when I joined it. It was about a year in. My law school study buddy had started it, James. And so it was an immediate necessity. Like it was, for us, it was, you have to get business in. There won't be a business if you don't do that. And so for my experience, it was like, jump right in. I think the more traditional path is that you enter a law firm and you probably spend the first about 5 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, really getting to know your craft, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe about year 6, 7, 8, something like that, there's a higher expectation you might be bringing in some business. And then if you're at the partner level, there's definitely an expectation that you're bringing in most of the business. So that's sort of the traditional model. Can't speak to other firms, but for us, it was immediate necessity of finding clients, and networking was the key to get the word out there. We had also done some early sponsorships, but you don't have a lot of money in the war chest when you first start out. So the idea of spending on professional marketing strategies as opposed to networking and just getting to know the right people. I know it's a multidisciplinary approach, but like we were forced into the networking really early. And I think that was the best thing we did. But it's definitely not the traditional path for attorneys to be in that entrepreneurial mindset from the start.
And you mentioned that the Charles River Chamber, you said that was really helpful for you.
Yeah, it continues to be. I'd say that the Plymouth Chamber on the South Shore, and by extension, the Duxbury Chamber and the Charles River Chamber, are the two chambers that I've found the most value out of. Very well run, both have professional staff that are great. They do regular events. It's just like both very well run operations and really add a lot of value to the communities that they're in and they serve. So those two things have been super valuable for me, and I encourage anyone to attend any one of their events. I'm sure there's other chambers that are good. It just, my own experience has been these two based on the markets that we're serving.
No, I can certainly echo, and I think Jeff's the same, echo that for Charles River. So they've been really fantastic.
In fact, that was actually, Mike, you mentioned Jen. That's how I got connected with I met her. She and I are in a small networking group through the Charles River Chamber. And so that's how I met her. And that's how I ended up on the boat. You mentioned BNI. We haven't talked at all, I think, on the podcast about BNI. So maybe it is a good time to sort of talk about it. I mean, I know that that you and your folks many of your folks are involved in BNI. What is your take?
My take is that it fully depends on the group you're in, right? Like any organization, right? I think that the criticism of BNI is this idea of forced relationships, training wheels. Like, I know what I'm doing, I don't need that, as a response. And also oh, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, because there's a lot of rules, right? And there's a lot of patterns to follow. And I think it depends on the group you're in, but a well-run group, I think, takes what they find value in with BNI, and maybe they're a little less strict on the things that cause friction for some members. And if you're in a group like that with really productive people, it's a big commitment. I mean, it's weekly. A lot of them are in person. Each week, my group meets at 7 a.m. I just got off the bench of 2 years as president, so I clearly find value in it for our Hanover Mass group. And I think at the end of the day, it's an excellent set of training wheels in a good way to understand how to network, just the simplicity of it. Try and do one a week, one referral, and one CEU or continuing education. Like if you're following that alone, you're probably doing pretty well. I think BNI gets a bad reputation for cost to benefit, which again, depends what you put into it. Right. And also, if you've got someone that's running the group in a less than positive way, or there's drama or something, well then, that's not going to be a good experience because you're so connected, right? Each week meeting. So I think that if you have tried BNI in the past and you thought, it's terrible, try again, but find the right group.
Interesting. Yeah, it's been interesting. I've sort of visited a couple of different BNI groups now, and I think it's just an interesting model and very cool. And I think a lot of I think the Charles River group that I'm part of sort of modeled itself after it was a little more loose, but it sort of modeled itself after that meeting structure. There's something to be said for forcing yourself every week to practice a pitch and and get it down to whatever a minute, whatever it is.
Yeah, we like it for our beginning folks, especially just to orient them to what is expected in networking relationships. And even if they don't do it forever, it's a great introduction. There's other groups too, Provisors, right? USA 500. There's lots of derivations, iterations of this stuff. Most people I know that do business development are in one or more of these groups to some degree, unless they're just casting like a huge and wide net. I think it works very well for localized networking, advertising, sales.
Yeah. So I have a question actually. So you're coming up on your 10-year anniversary, which is, amazing and really exciting. And you mentioned that starting at the firm early on, there was no choice. You all had to do as much networking as possible because it's, without business, there's not going to be one. So my question to you is, and I think so many business will look at this in a way of, inspiration and strategies. When you started out networking, I'm sure the mindset then to what it is now is obviously very different. You're achieving and looking after different things. I guess it's going to be a two-ended question here, but if you were to go back and maybe tell yourself advice or do anything differently, would you? Second part to that is what are you doing differently now, or what have you learned?
Great questions. Thank you. I think the biggest mindset shift has come with experience and able to actually do this thing I'm going to say. It's assessing whether or not someone's going to be a good fit for you to be productive in some way, right? Either productive for your clients, productive for you personally, even just like entrepreneurial mindset wise. And the problem is, I don't know if I give myself this direct advice, but maybe say no more. But knowing who to say no to politely, right, is the challenge, right? I think that we were finding our footing with who was our target demographic, right, for clients. What geography do we want to be in? What level of service within, say, trust and estates we want to provide? Is it more super high end? Is it more everyday person? So without having those concepts down, it's pretty hard to be properly selective with how you spend your time. So I think that what I would tell myself is just be more conscious and thoughtful in who you're choosing to connect with as a general piece of advice. But at the same token, you need to meet a lot of different people to know who you are sort of in this ecosystem of the business environment as well. And so it's not a clear answer for people just starting out. I would just say work super hard. I mean, we were really just working countless hours when I first started. I remember having to sort of do a lot of the business networking stuff, meetings during the day, and we had to do all the work at night. So it's kind of an associate from 7:30 to midnight, 1 a.m., whatever,
No sleep. Yep.
Yeah. Right. And when you're small, you have to be resourceful. I think we've got these core values at the firm. MacGyver is one of them for that reason. You have to work with what you can. And I think that the biggest piece of advice I would give, is being very planful. Even if you're wrong, get something down on the page. Later, a few years in, we started doing annual meetings. And that has been fantastic. Just doing an annual meeting, then doing quarterly meetings, then building out to, we use these level 10 meetings, which is part of EOS, which is part of a traction book. You probably are familiar with that. So, but you can't just do it all at the beginning because you have so many different responsibilities. But adding organization and structure to what you're doing when you know it's going well, and then being able to replicate that has been a key to our growth. Because if you have a real clear system and you're setting expectations clearly with people that work there and they're following it and they're able to check that box, you know, people can keep a lot in their head, but if they don't have to, put it down on the page. So having systems to ensure good quality is a real key thing. And the clients don't need to know that there's a checklist, right? They just need to know it's going well. So that's the dance, right? You don't want to be so robotic about your checklist that they feel like they're on a conveyor belt. It has to be a personalized experience, but having those checklists allow for confidence in the process for the practitioner such that they can spend a little more time having that extra conversation with the client, getting to know the families better. And then that has really enhanced things tremendously for us.
I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like there's a nice amount of strategy and reflection during that whole entire process, which I think you need to have. To your point, I'll pass it to you over Stephen in a moment here, but I agree. Is you, whether you're a new business, you start a new job, whatever, you know, you need to get your feet wet and meet as many people as possible to even understand what are the paths you want to do. And sometimes, to your point, you're working crazy hours. You have your job, then you're networking. A lot of it's after work. So that time to reflect and see what are you putting into it and getting back out of it, sometimes people forget about, but it's important.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd add to that is if you have a really good partner or partners, right, in the business, and it has to be a really close relationship, you're going to get a lot of value out of that. That's definitely one of our strengths. You know, the partnership I have with my two partners, like, trust them completely. And I know that's not every business, believe me, but when it happens like that, it really allows for a strength. So choose your companions business-wise wisely. You know, a bad business partner can be the end of your business, and a really great one can make it happen.
Absolutely.
Well, really quick, I know we're coming up on time, but I'm just curious, Sean, what is the feedback you're getting from the newer folks as they're coming on board, right, and potentially getting exposed to this that maybe they haven't had that opportunity before, or is kind of different than what they expected from a networking perspective?
Yeah, so I think that we are a light touch with the requirement that they network. So it's not really something, because if you just throw someone into something, they're not going to love doing that. So I think we lead by example. The partners all still participate in networking groups and marketing and networking, just the normal sorts of things that we're asking them to do. Sure. So there's that model to follow. And we've even approached non-lawyers about being in groups. We've got, a paralegal and another one considering joining groups, but it's like, here's what this is. If you'd like to do it, we think you'd be good at it. We'll support you with it. You have to commit to it if you're going to do it, whatever it might be, whether attending a networking event after hours or, being part of a regular group. So I think the feedback is that I think that they like doing it. I think that the key to that is building a community so they feel close to the other people that they're networking with, even if just people they regularly see at a Charles River Chamber event, someone that they recognize, know, can say hi to. We, of course, encourage them not to spend a lot of time with the people they already know at these events, right? But that comfort level builds a sense of community so that they build their confidence in it, because it is hard. It is hard to put yourself out there in any capacity, let alone represent the business, right? Yeah. So the feedback we get is people generally enjoy it, especially, I'd say the networking groups for the beginning people, because they just don't know. And it's a great shortcut to knowledge about how to do it. But, we don't also put a lot of pressure on them. It's sort of, they pick their future with it, right? So there's an incentive for lawyers to bring in business. It's not a crazy high incentive, but it's enough to incentivize action. So we get some residual from that. But I think that the feedback is that they enjoy it, and it's part of the culture here, which we get a lot of positive feedback on our culture.
I think it's awesome that you build that into their development. Well, we have blown through like amazingly fast, 30 minutes here. So this was an awesome conversation, Sean. We like to finish up by just going around the group and mentioning one cool networking thing you've got coming up. So Sean, I'll let you go first, and then we'll just do a quick round of the rest of us. And
sure. Just we talked about the two chambers I mentioned. Each of those chambers has an annual meeting. And if you have not attended one of them, I'd suggest going to one, because it really is a good summary of what they intend to do in the future, what they've done in the past. It is one of those big events where you might not make as meaningful connections right away, but it's sort of everyone coming together, and it's a really cool thing, because otherwise people just attend these events sporadically as they can make them. So this is an opportunity to go and just, I think most are Plymouth's in January, I think Charles River too, and then you get to go there and just see possibly a lot of people and make plans in the new year to do one-to-one.
Yeah.
So it's get that card. Hey, would it be okay if we did one-to-one? Yes, great. I'm going to reach out to you, setting expectations around that. And then, taking that list and just planning out. Because if you do that, you'll have, you get a bunch of cards. You'll have the next several weeks, after that sort of planned out for opportunities to connect further.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Well, I'm going to jump in and do mine because I don't want Stephen to steal it, because I'm really excited that tomorrow night I am actually going to get to go to one of Stephen's wine tasting events and at Moldova restaurant in Newton. And so really excited about that. So Stephen, I don't know if that was yours, but I just stole it from you.
Well, I might have mentioned that, but no, there are still open spots too. So if anybody wants in, there's a few more spots. There is actually, so yes, in addition to that, but one I'm looking forward to is I started my career at KPMG 20 years ago now. But so there is a KPMG Hartford alumni meetup, which I'm really looking forward to. That's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that. And then I think more locally though, and maybe more applicable to people watching this, it's a Brew Metro life science meeting on Wednesday morning. So that's another one. I don't know, Amelia, are you going to that one?
I'm unfortunately not going to be able to go, but I would love to. I have something else I have to do, unfortunately.
Well, so what's your event, Amelia?
My event, I'm excited. I am going to a dinner at Barcelona Wine Bar, hosted by the very famous Lena Ritter. I think I know Steven's been to a couple of her events. I'm excited because I used to work with Alita, and so I never got to attend her events because we were obviously working on the same team. So I'm really excited to attend her event, catch up with her, as well as see a couple of people who I know will be in attendance as well. And like we talked about earlier on the podcast, I do love these events because they are the kind of smaller, less than 10 people group. So you really get a good conversation with everybody instead of, a little bit of a packed room where you have to really work the room. To me, it's just more of a natural conversation and easier to really build connections.
Awesome. I guess, Taylor, you're going to take us.
I'll wrap it up. Barcelona Wine Bar has some great food too, by the way, as
I
well as
love
Moldova. So I'm ready for dinner. But I have two. Tis the season of all the holiday parties. So tonight, actually, I'm going to Lolita's for the Women's Affordable Housing Network holiday party. It's my first time actually going there. I do a lot of work in affordable housing, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then Wednesday, I'm going to ULI, Urban Land Institute's holiday snowport event. So I think that they rent out all of Snowport.
That's going to be cool.
Looking forward to it. Cool. Yeah, lots of joy around here. So it should be fun.
Cool. Awesome. Sounds like some great events. Well, Sean, this has been great. Thank you for joining us and telling us about your networking experience. And I still have, great memories of sailing into the sunset on Boston. I mean, a beautiful night.
Don't worry, Jeff. You're on the list for next season.
Don't worry.
No, thank you for having me.
This is great.
Thank you for helping everyone with networking. This is an excellent resource for people. So
yeah,
hey, Jeff, really quick, how to reach Sean. I think
I think email might be the easiest. I can just throw that out. It's just my last name, Hagan, Hagan, at lhhlegal.com. You can also Google us, find us there, contact us. Email's best for sure on that. So thanks.
Let's see if I actually can get that up on the screen for a second before. Did I get it right?
Yep, there you go.
Awesome. Definitely reach out. Definitely connect with Sean, and the LHH folks are awesome. So.
Yeah, happy to talk networking, happy to talk anything legal. We often connect people, even if it's not something we do. So if you've got a legal question, don't be shy about emailing me. I love helping people, so happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.